I like to thank the Karnataka Pulmonology Association and Dr. Puneet for giving me this opportunity. Let's begin the presentation. I'll be talking on Introduction to Endotracheal Intubation or an airway management, indications, anatomy and equipments used, preparation and the procedure, complications, management and extubation, COVID modifications in endotracheal intubation, and summary. Basic goals of airway management are oxygenation and ventilation. Airway management ranges from a simple airway opening maneuver like a bag and mask ventilation to a definitive airway control like endotracheal intubation. Despite the importance of basic life support maneuvers as initial steps in correcting or maintaining an oxygenation, many will go on to require an endotracheal intubation. Although extraglottic devices like LMA combi tube are also effective in providing gas exchange, placement of an endotracheal tube remains gold standard for airway management in emergencies. A cuffed endotracheal tube placed below the vocal cords provides both airway protection and a means of providing gas exchange and protection of the lungs from aspiration and permits a leak-free ventilation. Endotracheal tube is a rapid, simple, safe, non-surgical, and a preferred initial airway control. Complete evaluation of airway and knowledge of the difficult airway predictors can alert the physician to the potential for appropriate planning and management. In endotracheal intubations are usually done in ICU settings for pulmonary failure. Both nasal and oral tracheal intubation can be done, but nasal will be more secure as it prevents dislodgement and extubations. Intubations, patient needs endotracheal tube. It will extend for about 2 to 3 weeks in ICU settings. In a critically ill, agonal, unconscious patient, sedatives before intubation is not required, but in patients with active airway reflexes, few sedative drugs can be given prior to intubation. The indications. Intubation helps to secure and maintain an airway, correct abnormalities of gas exchange, and protect airway from aspiration. Like as a part of cardiopulmonary resuscitation, apneic patient, oropharyngeal pathological conditions, nasal trauma, nasopharyngeal obstruction, sinusitis, bleeding diathesis where it prevents aspiration, anticipated need for fiber optic bronchoscopy, and in surgeries requiring general anesthesia. Coming to anatomy, there are two openings to the human airway, the nose which leads to the pharynx and the mouth which leads to the oropharynx. These passages are separated anteriorly by the palate and behind the joint to the pharynx. The pharynx is a U-shaped fibromuscular structure that extends from the base of the skull above to the cricoid cartilage at the entrance of the esophagus below. It opens anteriorly into the nasal cavity, the mouth, and the larynx, the so-called the nasopharynx, oropharynx, laryngopharynx, respectively. At the base of the tongue, the epiglottis functionally separates it from the larynx, that is called as the laryngopharynx. The epiglottis prevents aspiration by covering the glottis, the opening of the larynx during swallowing. This epiglottis is basically a cover above the larynx, and the glottis is the space. It is not a structure, it is a potential space. And valvula is also a potential space between the base of the tongue and the epiglottis where the tip of our blade will be placed. The larynx is a cartilaginous skeleton held together by ligaments and muscles. The larynx is composed of 9 cartilage, 3 paired and 3 unpaired. The first picture depicts the glottis, which is the potential space between the two pearly white V-shaped vocal cords. It is a space above which is the arch represents the epiglottis, and above the epiglottis is the muscle tissue of the tongue. The space between the potential space between the tongue and the epiglottis arch is the valvula. This is a space where the tip of the laryngoscope blade comes. Before going to intubation, we need to assess the airway. Though there is no time in emergency situation, we need to assess an airway. The brief of it will be visualization, inspection of the face and the neck especially to see any trauma, visible thyroid glands, any distortion in anatomy, and assessment of the mouth opening, which is called a Mallampati classification. Minimum of 2-finger breath is required in mouth opening. In maximal mouth opening, 2-finger breath. This allows the space to pass our laryngoscope blade. Then evaluation of oropharyngeal anatomy and dentition, any dentures present, any loose tooth, we should be careful. Assessment of the neck range of motion, especially flexion and extension of the neck is important. So we'll know any cervical conditions, pathological conditions in the patient. And then assessment of the submandibular space, again for the ET tube and the blade placement, and assessment of patient's ability to slide the mandible anteriorly. The retrognathism, the condition called retrognathism, is a difficult airway condition. Next, what we need to prepare? One is people, we need a critical care physician who does the scoping and a trained assistant for him and a nursing assistant. The equipments required are, prior to the procedure of intubation, when we have time, we will need at least 5 minutes or 3 minutes time so that we can prepare this. Before that, we can have a bag and mask ventilation apparatus, which we call an ambu ventilation, for which an oxygen source, a suction apparatus, stethoscope, and airways is required. A nasal or an oral airway can be used. By then, we can load the preferred drugs and check for the working laryngoscopes. So particularly for intubation, we require 2 working sets of laryngoscope. Endotracheal tube will be decided according to the age of the patient. There is a particular formula, and working blade, stillet, bougie, Magil forceps, and adhesive tapes. Then comes the ventilator, which will be placed in the standby mode, a circuit with an HME filter connected. Finally, a fiber optic bronchoscope in case of failed intubation, or we need to confirm. Next, the drugs required are all emergency drugs, atropine, adrenaline, and we require magnesium sulfate, calcium gluconate, soda bicarb, 25% dextrose, and Xylocard, or what you call lignocaine IV preparation. Then we require first aid just before intubation if airway reflexes are present. Anesthetic induction drugs like propofol or ketamine, then local anesthetics for local spray, including IV preparation as lignocaine, a jelly preparation of a lignocaine, and a spray preparation, and sedatives like diazepam, midazolam can be given, and muscle relaxant like succinylcholine, vecuronium will be required. Next, coming to the monitors which we need here, we need a basic monitors, that is non-invasive is ECG, a pulse oximeter, a non-invasive blood pressure monitor, and a respiratory monitor. Extended to this, now which is becoming mandatory, is a capnography, and then a defibrillator, a peripheral and a central venous cannulation, or an arterial blood pressure. Coming to drugs per se, we require these drugs: diazepam, buprenorphine, pentazocine, morphine, and muscle relaxants also will be there. Their actions and duration and onset and duration of action and the mild side effects will also have to kept in mind. These are the other drugs. These are the instruments which are required, as I told you. In particular, I'll tell you about the endotracheal tube. Here in the parts, we should know carefully. This is the bevel, which is always not circular or not cut transversely, because it helps if there is any obstruction in that, it helps in removing the obstruction easily. And there is a small hole in the side that is called the Murphy's eye, which if in case the main part is obstructed, main path, then ventilation can be done in the side port. And then there is a cuff. We should always check for any leak in the cuff prior to using the tube. Then there is a small black mark. This is very important. At this mark, after you pass through the glottis, you stop at that mark. That mark is given so that then the cuff is correctly placed in the trachea beyond the larynx. So till there you have to pass your tube. Till that black line just passes the glottic opening. And these are the markings given so that at the angle of the mouth to attach, there is a specific formula for it. Age divided by 2 plus 12 in adults and plus 12 in 15. That will come approximately in adult female, it is between 18 to 20 mark, and adult male will be around 21 and 22. Then this is an inflatable balloon. We inflate it so that after the intubation, we inflate it up to the pressure with a stop cock attached to it. to 25 millimeters of mercury. Those settings where they do not have the stop cough, in our 5cc syringe, approximately 2.5 to 3 cc of air, and in hypertensive patients, lignocaine can be injected into it. Then an adhesive tape. These are the handle and blades, laryngoscope. This is the bag and mask maneuver, which we usually call it as ambu bag, which is done just before intubation while positioning the patient and all, or pre-oxygenating the patient, we can use this bag. Let's coming to the procedure. Through direct laryngoscopy, oral procedure can be done, which involves the direct visualization of the cords with assistance of the scope. The ET tube is inserted through the glottis into the trachea under continuous observation. So the position here was given by Bannister and Macbeth in 1944, which is the sniff position. Here we have to align the three anatomic axes, the oral, the pharyngeal, and the laryngeal. Cervical flexion, lower cervical flexion gives the laryngeal and pharyngeal into an axis, and high extension at the atlanto-occipital joint, that is the higher cervical, brings this oral axis into alignment. This is called morning sniff position. The three axes and their alignment in this figure C. A is the normal one which you have, and C is after giving the alignment. And B and D is when in obese patients. D is the modification for obese patient. It's called a ramped position, so that a shoulder assistance is also required. The procedure. The laryngoscope is held in the left hand with the patient's mouth open. By the right hand, we open the patient's mouth widely. This is by jaw thrust maneuver. The blade is introduced into the right side of the oropharynx. Right side of the oropharynx, and care should be taken that we should avoid damage to the teeth. And after this, the tongue is swept to the left side and below. This mechanism is like the birth, where either you should not do just left and then down. It is together. Both left and down procedure should be done together, so that the tip of the curved blade is usually in the vallecula. The handle is then raised. After your laryngoscope blade has passed to the base of the tongue, then you lift the handle perpendicularly to the mandible. That is, the handle should face the roof. Till then, when you lift it, you'll see the vocal cords. The epiglottis will be lifted and the two pearly white shaped vocal cords, V-shaped, will be seen. We should avoid damage to the lip and the teeth. Then the ET tube is taken in the right hand and it is passed through the abducted vocal cords till the black line I have mentioned. The ET tube cuff should lie in the upper trachea but beyond the larynx. That is the black mark which is made. The laryngoscope is then neatly withdrawn. Again, take care there is no damage. Then the cuff is inflated to about 25 millimeters of mercury, which corresponds to 2.5 to 3 cc of air. Next is nasal intubation. Nasal intubation is similar to oral intubation, except that here the ET tube is passed through the nose. And the size of the ET tube will be one size smaller to the same person for oral intubation. Okay, the nostril through which the patient breathes the most easily will be selected. Phenylephrine drops can be used to shrink the mucosa, or we can also use the lignocaine jelly. Then a lubricated ET tube with a water-soluble jelly, again introduced on it also, is introduced along the floor of the nose below the inferior turbinate at an angle perpendicular to the face. It is very straight, we have to introduce it. The tube's bevel should be directed laterally away from the turbinates. The tube is gradually advanced until its tip is visualized in the oropharynx. We just open the mouth. Then when we keep on passing the tube nasally, there is a giveaway, sudden giveaway. That is when the tube is in the oropharynx. Then you do the regular laryngoscopy with your left hand. Mind you, the tube should be passed from the right hand, and laryngoscopy, regular laryngoscopy in the left hand till you visualize the vocal cords. Then you also see the tip of the ET tube in the oropharynx. Then after you see the vocal cords, wide abducted vocal cords, you can guide the tube, ET tube, directly as before into the glottis. But if you find it difficult, we can use a Magill's forceps, and you can hold the tip of the ET tube seen in the oropharynx and guide it into the vocal cords. Okay. I'll just show you a video of it.
First step in mechanical ventilation is called endotracheal intubation. Once you are asleep, your doctor will use an instrument called a laryngoscope to perform the intubation. A laryngoscope, which consists of a handle, light, and dull blade, helps guide the endotracheal tube to its proper position. Your doctor will tilt your head back slightly and insert the laryngoscope through your mouth and down into your throat, taking special care to avoid contact with your teeth. Using the blade, your doctor will gently raise the epiglottis, which is a flap of tissue protecting your larynx. He or she will then advance the tip of the endotracheal tube into the trachea. Once the endotracheal tube is in the trachea, your doctor will inflate a small balloon surrounding the tube to make sure it remains snugly in place. Your doctor will remove the laryngoscope and tape the tube to the corner of your mouth to prevent it from being jostled out of position. Your doctor will check to see that the tube is properly positioned in the lower part of the trachea by inflating your lungs with
Next, confirming the position of the ET tube. For that, we have to inspect the chest and the abdomen. We see bilateral equal chest expansion, and auscultation, we call it as 5-point auscultation, both the supraclavicular and both the infra-axillary areas and an epigastrium. So it is 5-point auscultation confirmation, and palpation at the suprasternal notch for inflation and deflation of the cuff, then detection of water, mist or vapors in the ET tube. It confirms that it is in the trachea. Then ventilatory function, there will be normal airway pressures, and a capnography shows an EtCO2 value of normal on the monitor, and a chest X-ray should always be taken at least 20 minutes after intubation where the tip is seen at the carina. Then pulse oximeter. When we pre-oxygenate, there will be a high pulse of high saturation or a normal saturation. But after a few seconds of intubation, if it is not in the trachea, it starts dipping. So the dipping is an indication that it's not in place, and a stable SpO2 is an indication that it is in place. Then finally, to confirm, we can also use a fiber optic bronchoscope. Okay. Then there are a few physiological and mechanical effects of intubation. The laryngoscopy and intubation itself produces reflex sympathetic stimulation, like an increase in plasma catecholamines, which causes tachycardia, hypertension, infarction, depression of the contractility, ventricular arrhythmias, and intracranial tension. These conditions can be deleterious in a patient who already has any ischemic heart disease or is an hypertensive or has contractility issues or already is on a stroke patient, etc. For that, we can use, for such patients, just before 90 seconds before the procedure, we can give IV lignocaine at 1 milligram per kg body weight, or a sublingual nifedipine or an IV nitroglycerin drip infusion can be started. Endotracheal tube reduces the dead space of the nose and mouth to about 60 to 70 ml. The tube bypasses the closing mechanism of the glottis, so it may reduce FRC and predispose the patient to atelectasis. The tube causes reflex bronchoconstriction, laryngospasm, and thus an increase in airway resistance, which will be shown on the ventilator graph. And the ET tube bypasses the humidification from the nose and the upper trachea, so drying the secretions, depressing the ciliary motility, and impairing the clearance of the mucus. Hence, HMA filters in the circuit helps to humidify the passages. Then finally, infections are also one of the effects which happens due to our aseptic intubation procedures, which occur mainly during emergencies. Then what are the complications? During laryngoscopy and intubation, trauma to any one of the anatomical structures would happen, and incorrect placement of the tube itself is a complication, like either esophageal or too deep in endobronchial. Then while the patient is intubated, there may be obstruction in the tube, the leak in the cuff, or high pressures in the cuff, or the displacement, self-extubation or auto-extubation can occur, or fistulas may occur, and infections again. After extubation, immediately there might be laryngeal edema, sore throat, hoarseness, palsies, dysfunctional larynx, which leads to aspiration. Delayed complications after extubation, laryngeal erythema, ulcers, polyp, stenosis, or abscess. In trachea, tracheomalacia and stenosis may occur. Extubation. Judging when to remove an ET tube is also the part of this above art. So, before extubation, we should ensure hemodynamic stability in this patient, adequate reversal if a neuromuscular blockade is used, normothermia, adequate analgesia, thorough suctioning of the pharynx, ET tube itself, and the gastric tube also. And also, the primary pathology why we intubated the patient should be cleared. Then here also during extubation, the patient should be in sniff position because already the patient will be positioned in optimal airway management. So if re-intubation is required, it would be easy. Next is you can also use above the sniff position, you can give some more head up in case if the patient is obese or hypoventilating and any obstruction, airway obstruction you are suspecting in the patient. Or lateral position if you are suspecting any aspiration. So that it will collect in the lateral position and you can suction it off. Then application of a positive pressure breath using a bag and mask ventilation just before deflating the cuff helps in removing the secretions above the cuff. Then extubation with an inflated cuff should never be done because a vocal cord injury or an arytenoid dislocation occurs as in self-extubation or auto-extubation. Next, what are the alternative methods to this tracheal intubation? Routine oral and nasal intubations have been described for anesthetized patients as well as non-anesthetized patients like awake patients. Whether the patient is awake, asleep, or whether intubation is done orally, nasally, it can be performed either with a rigid laryngoscope or a fiber optic one or a blind technique as in trauma. There are at least 12 different methods to intubate a patient. An alternative technique like an LMA, a tracheolite, a retrograde approach, a combi tube are available, and tracheostomy and cricothyrotomy can be a life-saving procedure to preserve the airway of the patient. Now coming to difference between adult and pediatric airway. Pediatric or an infant intubation is slightly difficult when compared to adult because the baby has a larger head when compared to adult and the neck is, the control will not be developed in as an adult. So it is difficult to manipulate like the head tilt, jaw thrust or a chin lift maneuver should not be done here. What are the differences? The nose, the cartilages are very thin and not well developed. Mucosa are highly vascular when compared to adult. So there is risk of bleeding. Tongue is relatively large when compared to the adults. That's why there is falling back of tongue, especially in an unconscious kid. It's very difficult. So insertion of scope is difficult and straight blade is the better choice. The curved Macintosh blade will be replaced by a straight Miller blade in pediatrics. Then larynx. Larynx is more rostral and it is a funnel shaped in case of pediatric, where it is almost barrel or cylindrical in case of adults. So pediatric airway, the narrowest part will always be the cricoid cartilage itself, whereas in adult it is the glottic opening which is the narrowest part. So the ET tube size will vary. Next, the epiglottis. The epiglottis is omega shaped in case of kids, whereas it is leafy, large, and little floppy in adults. So it is to visualize, to lift, to maneuver, to pass the tube, it will be difficult in pediatrics. Next, the hyoid and the thyroid, both the cartilage are intimately close, whereas it's separated in adults. And glottis, it is half cartilaginous, whereas it is just less cartilaginous in case of adults. And cricoid is inclined posteriorly, whereas it is vertical in case of adults. This is the pic which first picture demonstrates us the shape of the larynx. And B is the pediatric one, A is the adult one. And in the second pic, we can see the omega shape in pediatric airway, that is the epiglottis. Below that, you see the vocal cords. And in adults, it is wide, it is almost U-shaped, so it is easier to manipulate. Then a few COVID modifications in endotracheal intubations. What are the do's and don'ts in case of COVID time? What are the do's? Do have all the necessary equipments at the arm's reach. Do ensure viral filters, that is the HME filters on all types of masks. Even during bag and mask ventilation, please use an HME filter. And 2 filters in case of a non-invasive technique of ventilation is used. Do know all patients are apnea intolerant and do paralyze the patient to avoid coughing. That is an aerosol generating procedure in corona suspected or corona positive cases. Do accept lower oxygen levels at low flow rates. Do limit personnel inside. 3 people would be sufficient inside the room, and most experienced person should be inside the room intubating the patient. Do not hurry. Ensure the safety of your co-workers. Do bag and mask ventilation or a positive pressure only after inflating the cuff, after intubation. Do use a second hand technique for bag and mask ventilation for proper seal in the patient, so that you can hold the mask and somebody can, then assistant can bag the patient so that there is no leak or aerosol generation. And do use induction agents or sedatives for the non-cooperative patients. Do clamp the ET tube during any disconnections. After you intubate, immediately clamp the ET tube, then connect an positive pressure ventilation, inflate the cuff, check for the position, then again clamp the ET tube, connect to the ventilator, clamp it again before suctioning, and clamping is very important. And do simulation training and practice sessions with the PPE on, because it is difficult to do with the PPE. Then don'ts in COVID will be don't rush to intubate, but at the same way, do not delay intubation. And don't use nebulizers here in these patients. Please, you can use the regular puff ones, the nebulizations, and open suctioning is more dangerous because of more aerosol generation. Better to go for a closed suctioning, and do not panic. So to summarize, successful airway management requires competent decision making and a good procedure skills. Critical care physician must have a fundamental knowledge of airway anatomy, physiology, and pharmacology, and well-developed skills in the use of the wide variety of new airway devices available. Although most airways are straightforward, prediction and planning of a difficult airway is very crucial, especially in emergency situations. Expertise always comes from a dedicated practice and commitment for a career-long learning of newer techniques. Thank you.